Hi, good evening. This is Bob Moeller. I'm the president of the HOA, and I want to thank you for joining us in our first ever virtual town hall meeting. We're new to this format and the webinar technology, so please bear with us. We've got over 100 registered people, and it's going to take a little while to get through this. We're privileged tonight to have our two James City County supervisors join us. We welcome Supervisors Jim Eisenhower, Chairman and representing the Jamestown District, and Michael Hipple, Vice Chairman, representing the Powhatan District. Before we begin, I'd like to recognize the entire James City County Board of Supervisors for their support of our amendment to the Forge Colony proffers. At their May 12th meeting, they approved our proposed announcement. We also want to recognize and thank James City County staff, specifically Paul Holt, the planning director, and Adam Kinsman, the county attorney, working for the last 2 years with our team of Drew Mulhare and our general manager, and Sue Tarley, our attorney. They hammered out a mutually beneficial agreement for both parties, and we really thank them for that. Tonight's process, this is going to be different than raising your hand, because we can't see you, and asking a question. Each of our supervisors will provide a 5-minute or so update on the county, and then we'll open it up for questions. We are limited by this software to have only 130. We'll have 100 video viewers. Those of you who signed into the session after we reach our limit will be able to hear what's said, but may not be able to see what's said. How do you ask questions? If you have video, there should be a box on the right side of your screen that says questions, type here. I'd encourage each of you to type your questions and submit them at any time. We are prioritizing the questions that we received ahead of time by email to answer tonight. If you don't have video, or like me, you're on a tablet, so the screen's small, I don't have any right-hand column. You can call the office, our office, at 757-258-4230. I repeat, 757-258-4230. We have staff on hand, and they'll take your questions and forward it on to Drew. The staff will collect the questions, including some of those you previously submitted, like I mentioned. We'll group them, and then we'll pass them to Drew Mulhare, who will pose the questions to our panelists. After the questions, supervisors, we'll stop the questions about 8 p.m. and we'll release the supervisors and thank them for their attendance, but we'll let them exit. I'm going to stick around for the HOA and hope to wrap up around 8:30. If you have questions for the HOA specific, then, and some people have already submitted HOA specific questions, we'll answer those afterwards. We will be posting this entire video, audio on the website, and we'll send out a blast email with a link. So if you weren't able to get it, it'll be posted next week. Thank you, and I turn it over to our two supervisors, and I'll be back with you after they're finished. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I guess I'm up first.
Yes, sir.
Jim Eisenhower, the Jamestown District Supervisor, and Michael and I flipped and I lost, so I'll go first. One of the things I wanted to bring people up to speed on right off the bat is our budgeting process, since it is anything but a conventional budgeting year. We had our regular budget prepared, and it was released, and then shortly after it was released, everything got turned upside down. And once we had declared our state of emergency and we're getting into taking actions to shut down a lot of the county offices and everything, we had staff go back and take a very close look at what they thought the impacts of the coronavirus pandemic would be on our revenues. I know the state's going through the same kind of thing. You can probably expect that the General Assembly will have a special session later, probably in June, to try to deal with the revenue shortfalls from the state budget. Puts us at a little bit of a disadvantage in that we are trying to deal with what the state shortfalls are, and by guessing, they haven't actually come out quite as firmly as we have. But our staff did a very, very good job, I thought, of analyzing the revenues and where we expected shortfalls. And of course, what hurts us more than most other communities is our reliance upon revenues from tourism. One of the studies they provided for us showed that if this were to continue with an adverse impact on tourism for the full year, we could expect a revenue loss of as much as $16 million for James City County. So that figured heavily into our debate. What we asked staff to do was to go back and take a look at budget cut increments of 5%, 10%, 15%, and 20%. And then the staff would not only lay out where the revenues would be, they thought, be coming from, and where the most likely loss of revenue would be. And then on the other side, they would lay down areas where we felt that we could cut in order to balance the budget, because we are required, unlike the federal government, we are required to have a balanced budget. We're not allowed to print it and operate at a deficit. We had that information for the board to consider. Our staff recommendation was that they felt that the proper area for us to be was around 10%. And so we had long and interesting debates amongst the supervisors, with opinions ranging from anywhere from 5 to 20%. And ultimately, we came to a consensus that we would build our budget right now on a 10% cut. I think the concern that people are expressing is what happens if it turns out to be worse than that. This is going to be one of those years that whether we adopted at 10% or 20, that if revenues change, we're going to have to go back and rework the budget multiple times during the year. I think that's just a given factor that we're going to have to live with. But what I wanted to tell folks is, based upon that 10% cut, that represents roughly about $20 million, $21 million. And the way that is laid out for us is that we have said we were going to share the cuts with the school district on the same ratio in which we share the revenues. And that's 52% of our revenues go to support schools, so 52% of the cuts would go to the schools, and 48% for the rest of the county operations. County operations are pretty straightforward. The recommendations at the 10% cut level is $5.3 million to our operations across the board. This includes police, fire, general services, everything that we have in all of county operations. There's specific tourism funding that we're proposing to cut by about $1.7 million. And then capital, we had $3.4 million worth of capital that we could defer and push out, so it wouldn't be in this year. So that's how it worked out. And as you can see, roughly half of the county's cuts, which is $10.4 million, 5.3 of it is operations. So it's about half operations. Where we've come into a bit of an interesting dilemma is with schools. County funding for the schools was cut by $11.2 million. The county's funding for school operations was cut by $2 million, and our cut for their CIP, their capital program, was $3.9 million. The big cut is $5.3 million, and that is what I call pass-through. It's a state tax, sales tax for education. It's money that is passed through from the state through us, because we are the fiscal agent, directly to the schools. And that's one we really don't have a whole lot of control over, because it's whatever it is what they get. If there's more there, they get it. If there's less there, that's what they get. It's not something that we normally have picked up and tried to help fund. We try to help fill other shortfalls when they arise, but that's not one that normally happens. So we are in the process right now of trying to figure out how to make it a little bit easier on our schools, because there's some pretty adverse effects to the schools. At our last meeting, we voted unanimously to add $300,000 back in to the school's operations. We are working with them, and we think we have a method under study right now that may be able to help us totally eliminate that $2 million worth of the rest of the amount, the $2 million worth of county operations cuts, which would help the schools. But again, the problem is what's going to happen with state revenue for them. Essentially, we are going to also be getting, we got clarification this afternoon. It was not 6.6 million, is it, Michael? I think. CARES funding. And originally we thought we were going to get half of that on June 1st. We now understand we're going to get all of it June 1st. I've already signed the documents to allow them to forward that to us. That money is not to be used for replacement of lost revenue. It is to reimburse ourselves for COVID-related expenses starting at a specific date in March. I think it's March 30th or something like that,
Yep.
and through the end of the year. So we will be looking at that across the board for county operations, for schools, for all of the other agencies that we fund to try to recover as much of that money. My goal is not to leave a penny of it on the table, to put it all back into our budget to pay for the things that we've had to pay for as we've been going through all of this. So those things are what we're working with right now. We meet next Tuesday for a work session. We will be going through mostly the capital program, and then on June the 9th we will have our final adoption of the budget. So I'm sure there'll be some budget questions, some school questions, some other county service questions as we go. So I'll pass it over to Michael and let him talk a little bit, and then we'll start fielding your questions.
Thank you, Jim, and good evening to the Forest Colony family. I'm Michael Hipple. I'm Vice Chair of the Board of Supervisors. I'm married with 7 children, and I sit on several committees and commissions. I want to go over a few of them. The HR TAC, which is Hampton Roads Transportation Accountability Commission, and the HRPDC, which is the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission, the HRTPO, which is Hampton Roads Transportation Planning Organization, and HRUMFA, which is a mouthful in itself. HRUMFA stands for the Hampton Roads Military and Federal Facilities Alliance. I want to talk a little bit about roads, and there's good news with roads, and we've had so much news about the pandemic that we're under. Every now and then it's good to get some good news of what's going on, and we've done a lot as far as regionally with roads. So let's talk locally. The Long Hill Road is started in the winter of 2019, and it's due to be completed in October of 2021. So that's on target, and hopefully it'll be definitely completed by October of 2021. The Centerville Road and News area there that they're working on right now is slated to be completed, hopefully a little bit earlier, but it's slated right now to be completed December of this year, 2020. The Croker Road interchange, if everybody knows where the Croker Road Library is up in the Upper County, is due to start in the year of 2023. And also to let you know that during these projects, what we're doing is we're teaming up with Dominion Energy in order to bury a lot of our power and a lot of our communications. And what that does is gives us a better viewscape of the area, but it also allows us that during emergencies, we can bring power back a little bit quicker than trying to replace poles and that sort of thing. So it's as we move forward, the board years ago decided that they would take that initiative. I think, Jim, you were on the board at that time, and decided that let's get as much buried in the ground as possible. And that was a very important move then, and it's really saved us in the long run now. Regionally, to let you know what's going on with all those committees, there's 17 jurisdictions that are connected to that. And with those, we have over 200 lane miles of road under construction right now as we speak. That's the most we've had in my existence. If everybody knows the exit 234 and 199 on Interstate 64, and if you're not quite familiar where that is, if you know where Pierce Barbecue is and you enjoy a Pierce Barbecue, a little plug for Pierce, and you'll know that it's not far from that intersection. From there all the way to Briars Hill, 100% improvement will be completed and in service by the end of 2025. That's a lot to say with the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel included in that, which is the largest single transportation project in the United States going on right now, right here in Hampton Roads. And James City County is a very big, important part of that. And also the high rise bridge tunnel or bridge is also in there. So regionally, as we work together, not only in James City County, but across our region, regionally, we're supplying $4.64 billion in highway construction work out of $5 billion. So that's amazing, because I never thought in my wildest dreams that we would be tackling projects of $4.64 billion in transportation. So it's a lot being said for our community and what we did years ago to put things in place in order that we knew we need to move transportation forward. So there's a lot of money and a lot of community effort and support in that. There's a lot of projects going on in James City County. So I want to touch on those few little things before we got into questions and answering. And I can't wait till we get into the questions, because that's where we really find out what the citizens are looking for, what they need, what they're desiring, and how we can move that forward in our board meetings. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak a little bit before we get started, and can't wait for the questions. Thank you.
Uh-oh, can't hear him.
We had a number of questions in advance. We also have a couple questions that are stacking up with those participants on our webinar. So Jim, I'll start this question to you, and I know both of you will probably want to share in some of the answers for some of these questions. But the first one goes to the economics of James City County being primarily a tourism-based economy in our area. And what are the county's thoughts in terms of lessons learned from this pandemic about diversifying our economic base so that we're not so dependent on tourism?
That's an excellent question, and that's something we've been wrestling for quite a while. I will tell you that we've had probably the largest single economic development new addition since I think the brewery and Busch Gardens, in that we have this company that has taken over the old site where Lumber Liquidators has left. Navia is in, they're making tankless hot water heaters and things like that. We're going to become their North American headquarters, and I think we're going to be helping supply literally the eastern 2/3 of the United States and part of Canada from headquarters here. It's a tremendous investment that they're making. I don't recall the exact figures right offhand, but we've helped them with some state incentives, some county incentives. We've made it easier for them to, we bought land adjacent to help them to expand. And they are bringing jobs to us that are much higher than our standard tourism jobs. I think the average was like $54,000, $55,000, and they're bringing quite a few, several hundred. And it's over the next 4 to 5 years, they're going to be generating that expansion to their business. And I think you'll find that by the time they get to the end of this 4 or 5 year period, they're going to be one of our major components to our industrial base, if you will. We also did our retreat earlier this year down at the brewery. And if you've never been through the brewery and the tour of the brewery, that is an awesome place. It's a tremendous driver for our economy here. So those are the things that we need to continue working on, because as much as we like try to help our tourism industry, when it becomes too much of one thing, it becomes in circumstances like today really detrimental. And you can see it in that our loss of revenue in James City County is greater than the loss of revenue for some of our adjacent areas like Newport News and Hampton because of that. So, Michael, throw your 2 cents in.
And that Navion was a great asset for James City County. And what happens with a company like that, when you have a larger company that comes in that's going to service most of the United States, they're going to have other companies join them in order to make sure that they can supply the needs that they need in order to make these on-demand hot water heaters. In fact, I have one in my house. They're great units. and they're going to be even better now that they're made in James City County. But we've been looking for quite some time to diversify, and it's not something that you can just pull off a shelf. You have to have infrastructure in place and ready. Companies, when they come in, they want to move into a building. They don't want to look at a site and say, okay, in 3 or 4 years, we can do this. They want to move in right away. So we're trying to make it a lot easier in order for companies to get into the community and try to repurpose different buildings. We just repurposed the one up at the old Farm Fresh, and in order to get Chesapeake Bank, they're just moved in there. At our last meeting, we voted on that in order to repurpose Chesapeake Bank. And we hear that from a lot of people. Why aren't you trying to reutilize the buildings we have? And so we're constantly working with our economic development team in order to put those out to people that hopefully somebody will move into a building that's not being utilized to its full extent.
Thank you, gentlemen. Another question. This is not. This is also related to the economics in James City County. Excuse me. But the question is, has James City County considered protocols for when we welcome visitors back into James City County and the historic triangle, perhaps? What type of protocols might be in place for visitors, and references being made to other localities, other states that, basically everywhere from a checkpoint to less dramatic entry protocols? Has the county and your other local jurisdictions discussed anything like that?
Want me to take that, Jim?
You start and I'll follow up.
Okay. Yes, we're looking in, and I guess I kind of got when I first mentioned it in the county, and everything went out. We want to open up right away. We want to do this one, and that wasn't the discussion. The discussion was for the board was to how do we open up when we're allowed to open it up, because the governor dictates certain things that can be, and we're in phase 1. We're getting ready to go into hopefully shortly in phase 2 possibly, but it depends on how phase 1 goes. So, but what we were thinking on the board was, what do we need to put in place when this is allowed to happen? So we're pushing the envelope a little bit as far as, okay, here's what we've got to, we're trying to think ahead and trying to put things in place of, and it's unknown for us as well. I mean, when you get elected, a lot of people think you know exactly what to do on every move. This is new to all of us. And I was just down at Chesapeake talking to mayors and chairs and talking about how they're doing things, and we're bouncing things back and forth. We put a team together to tell us, okay, this is happening in our community, other communities. We're getting information from staff. This is what's going on. We're bringing our staff back in a slow process so that we can keep distance, we can keep them safe, and we can monitor as far as if we get an influx of anything. So it's going to be a process of time, and it's going to be a learning process for us and the citizens in order to figure out exactly everything that we need to put in place. And we're going to try to make all the right decisions and the best decisions. But as we go along, it's a trial effort to figure out, okay, this was enough, or we could have gone a little more, could have gone a little less. Jim?
Yeah, one of the things I think maybe you were alluding to on this was our tourism industry, but it does apply to just general industry as well. 2 of our board members sit on a couple of the chamber councils. I am the representative from the board on the business council, and Ruth Larson is the representative from the board on the tourism council, which are the 2 sides of the Chamber and Tourism Alliance. This gives us the opportunity to work with the providers of service for the tourism industry as well as our regular industries to try to have, if you will, a centralized point of contact on how do we reach out to tourists that come here to visit. I know we have members of all of our major tourism attractions that sit on these boards as well. And I think you'll find that if you ever watch any of those meetings, they're very productive. We get a lot done in there, and I think that that may be what they were driving at with the question a little bit, but I'm not totally sure. I hope we've answered the question adequately.
Well, thank you. Also, Jim, you were in your opening remarks, you talked about looking at the proposed budget and the potential cuts and things like that. Can you add some more specifics as to what capital projects are currently underway that may not get completed or are being deferred or will not be completed under the original assumption time schedule?
Yeah, I can tell you that let me start with over on the school side. And what we do with the school side is we ask the school administration to make value judgments about what they can push out and what they can't. One of the things that we had been talking about was, the new facilities. And of course, with this, we basically have taken anything new and pushed it out beyond this next fiscal year so that we can come back and see a year from now if we're recovering. Then we can sort of re-rack the programs and take a look at when a new school is needed or when a new fire station. Those are two things that we have. We do on the school side. We have an elementary school and some needs for some pre-K program space that were in the CIP that have been pushed out. What the schools have also done is they have what I would call the capital maintenance, which is you need a new roof, you need a new air conditioning system, and those are expensive. They have a lot of those racked up, and they have basically said, all right, we can push these a year or two, and that has helped tremendously. So they were very effective at looking at their CIP program and pushing things out. For us, a couple of things that we're looking at, the two largest ones I would say are that's fire station number 6, which is something that we've got the land and we will probably do, but it will get pushed out. We have some interim fixes to try to help cover response times and try to make things a little bit better in the intervening time until we can actually get that built. And then some of the other things that we have were parks and recreation related, which are nice, but in the current environment, we are going to have to make tough decisions about what we push off. And I'll tell you that my approach to this, if you want to watch our budget session, if you suffer from insomnia, watch that, right? Next Tuesday night, we will be looking at these programs and on a case-by-case basis. And what I'm going to be looking for is things that we want to continue funding even under the current circumstances are things that are, number one, required for safety, or number two, you have an asset that if you don't do something, it's going to deteriorate. So you are preserving the value of the asset, or you're preserving safety for the public. Beyond that, if it's nice to have, we want to try to push it out because we just really don't know how this is all going to shake out over the next couple of months. Michael?
Yes, and one point with what Jim was talking about as far as the schools, we give them a certain amount, and we try to fund them as high as we can possibly fund them. And then it's up to the school to make the decisions, and that's the school board's authority, is to make the decisions on what will be spent and what will be cut. We don't, a lot of people think that the board of supervisors go in and decide what gets cut and what doesn't in the school board. Or in the schools. The school board is the deciding. And by law, we can't do that. We give them X amount of funding, and then it's their job to take it from there and decide what they're going to fund and how they're going to fund it, and their CIPs and everything. We try to fund them, and they request, hey, we'd like to do this or that, and we try to fill that void for them as far as funding. But during certain times like this, it's tough on all of us, and we're looking at, and like Jim said, we're going to have the next work session, and definitely it's one of the best shows on TV, so you ought to watch and watch and see what we go through and what it takes to figure out, is this a project we want to do now? Is this a project we want to do later? Can we put this on the back burner 2 or 3 years and bring it back? And each project's important to sections of our citizens out there, and they're very important. And we try to fill them all, but when you're limited, with like we are right now, when you're limited, you sometimes can't fund everything that you really want to fund. So and we would love to fund it all, but like at home, you go out to eat and you want to buy something and you don't have enough funding in your pocket, you buy something else. And that's how that goes. So we're all in the boat together, and we're going to do our best.
Thank you, Mike. I'll start this question to you. One of our residents has been closely following the budget discussions, and the question is, what is the status of portable water? Did not hear that mentioned during the budget discussions.
And it wasn't. We're still working on that. There's some options. We've gotten some more time than what we thought we originally had when our county administrator Brian Hill was here, and so Doug, who is in charge of the service authority, the director there, and he's working very hard to figure out. We're looking at all our options. We left everything on the table. So we've left the reservoirs, the different types of reservoirs. We've also left the water from Newport News as a possibility, the desal plant a possibility, groundwater a possibility. So we're looking at what the cost is, because the costs are hundreds of millions of dollars. So this is not a decision that we're gonna make overnight. It's gonna take a while to figure out what we can do. And you would think that if you need water, you could just make a reservoir, especially if you had the land and had the ability. But when you go through all the processes, it's not as easy to have a reservoir as it used to be years ago. So those are, I would love to see us one day have a reservoir and have that extra option. But we may look at desal, we may look at groundwater, we may look at reservoir, we may look at Newport News. The only problem I worry with is Newport News is that water is gold, and I've said it before, and it controls our destiny. So if we're not careful and we don't do this right, we could end up losing our destiny as far as what we need to bring in other commercial entities into the community without having the right amount of water. So it's a balancing act of not only what we can bring to the community economically, what we can bring for our citizens, and what our longevity is as far as our water sources and our water needs. And I think you're going to see it all over the United States that water is going to be more important than a lot of things out there, because water right now and will be gold. It's very important to us. I hope that answers the question.
Let me throw in a couple of other things. Yeah, Michael's clear that we've been looking at across the board at a wide range of options. This was driven by the fact that we were told by DEQ that we were going to lose a large portion of our groundwater withdrawal because of the stress on the aquifer. I think two things have occurred with groundwater since that time period. Number one is that I think that the stress and the demand for water that we've been using from that aquifer has actually gone down. The per capita demand has gone down. One of the reasons for that, I think, is we have an awful lot of new appliances and fixtures that are more water efficient. I think one of the biggest things here in James City County that's made a huge difference when I first got on the board many, many years ago was at that time, our biggest problem was taking good potable drinking water and pouring it out on the ground. We were basically using it for irrigation, and we were doing horrendous irrigation. And that's when we went to the watering restrictions during the summer, the odd even, and the triple tier. Now we're going to a 4-tier, so that we didn't penalize the people who had normal usage, but if you got way up on irrigation, you were going to pay a premium price for it. It has helped modify the behavior of our citizens. I can tell you right now that I have about a third the grass that I used to have. Most of my yard now is mulch and bushes. I don't do a tremendous amount of irrigation, so I think that's helped us. The second part is this wastewater, what they call a SWIFT, I guess, the re-injection of the wastewater into the aquifer to try to restore some of the pressure to the aquifer. It appears that that may be having some success because what you're looking for is the subsidence of the aquifer levels, and it seems to have stabilized. I know they've got a project going projects going on all through our area. So those two things may make it easier for us to maintain our supply of groundwater. And the reason I say that is the groundwater is the cheapest. It is the absolute cheapest water we're going to get. Water will always be available. We can get water through other sources, but the price goes way, way up as you get into higher levels of technology. The difficulty with new surface water reservoirs is the regulation process. It's become almost impossible to get that done. We do have an opportunity with Newport News. A lot of people don't realize that James City Service Authority water does not cover all of James City. The southern end of the county, most of the Roberts District and the Kings Mill area, I believe, and the brewery are all supplied by Newport News. So if we can come to some agreement with Newport News to where we can purchase some water rights from them, that would be great. But I agree with Michael. We don't want to be solely reliant on that. We want to be able to control our own destiny when it comes to that. And then ultimately, the technology is getting better for the desal, but it is the most expensive. And as I say, I think we always have the option of falling back on that, and we would be able to meet our water demands, but our prices would definitely go up. And a lot of people don't realize it, but right now we are, I believe, if not the lowest, the second lowest cost for water in the entire Tidewater region. So even though your water bills have gone up, talk to your neighbors in other jurisdictions, they pay a lot more.
Thank you. Okay, let's take a few minutes for a few softball questions. I know you can't be in a public meeting without people asking you DMV and VDOT type of questions. Not exactly your lane, but you have a lot of influence. So there are a couple different questions related to timing of traffic lights, sequencing, turn arrows, things like that. Jim, who should our residents contact if they have questions in that regard?
Yeah, you can contact us. We normally bring in Rossi Carroll is our resident VDOT engineer. We bring Rossi in once a quarter, and we have he usually do a work session, and he gives us a quarterly report on VDOT projects. He talks about the construction projects Michael's been talking about, and he fields questions that we have from residents. And a couple of things that I can tell you people, why can't we synchronize the traffic lights? And after all is said and done, I'm still not sure why we can't, because my wife seems to hit them all green, I hit them all red. But yeah, it's a real problem. One of the things that I have heard about recently is these flashing yellow turn arrows. And you will find that there are some places, I think there's over at the entrance to Monticello Marketplace, where the flashing yellow lights are there. Sometimes of the day they don't work, and sometimes of the day they do. And there's a reason for that, I found out, and that is because they have certain traffic patterns through the day where it's heavy, and they have accident data that shows that it can contribute to more accidents. And so what they've done is they basically have taken it and said when it's more likely to cause a problem than solve a problem, they shut it down. I had no idea that they were doing that until a question came up in one of our work sessions like that. But anytime anybody has a question about any aspect of VDOT operations, whether it's mowing, whether it's traffic lights, anything, let your supervisor know, and we'll get with Rossi and try to get an answer for you. He's very good at getting answers for our constituents. Michael?
Yes, Rossi, great on getting that information out to us and out to the public. So I definitely, give us a call, give us a holler. 199, a lot of people talk about 199, and there's one light that's Williamsburg's, and the rest are ours. And sometimes that gets out of sync. And that really frustrates people because it's Williamsburg, being the city, owns their streets. James City County, being a county, doesn't own the streets. So the state owns our streets and maintains our streets, which keeps our taxes lower because we don't have all the streets to maintain, the snow to remove and all that. But in the process, sometimes that one light on 199, I hear a lot of comments on that one. And that's in the city of Williamsburg, and where the rest of them are in James City County. And so sometimes when something happens in that light, they change something out, it gets out of sync and it throws everything out of whack on 199.
So we had another question that kind of talks about how moving forward, some of the good news, some of the lessons learned, anywhere from working at home to traveling and commuting. So this question is about the Colonial Parkway, and the portion of the parkway is closed to vehicle traffic, the portion that heads in the direction of Jamestown. And it's being enjoyed by a lot of folks, a lot of pedestrians, a lot of bicyclists. We know that we have generally one day set aside where the parkway is open to bicyclists and pedestrians. But has there been any conversation about finding future windows to be able to be a pedestrian or bicyclist on the parkway more often?
That would be a national parks. They own the parkway, so that would be something that we would have to, if somebody wants to send us an email on that and wants some more time on the parkway, we'll be more than happy to entertain that with the Park Service and address that issue and ask, is there a way we can get more time for bikes and that sort of thing? Because it's a beautiful parkway and it's great to ride a bike down. I know that years ago, the Harley Davidson group asked if they could put a thing, and it was over 100 some motorcycles, and I happened to be one of the leading group of that. And it was a fantastic thing, the first time it had ever been done on the parkway. And we rode through Williamsburg and all that, and it was a wonderful event. And I know we're talking about bicycles right now, not motorcycles, but it was a wonderful event, and they had to petition the Park Service in order to be allowed to do that. It wasn't something you could just get together and do because it's not allowed. But that would be a great one to send to the Board of Supervisors and let us try to get that moving ahead for you. And we'll be more than happy to see if we can push that through. Jim?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of the things, I've gotten a lot of feedback in the last week or so about people out being able to walk or bicycle out around Jamestown Island. And for that matter, all of our trails and all of our parks are getting a tremendous workout. And this is where we have really, really good recreational assets that I think are helping our citizens to a great degree. But yeah, no, this since it's the National Park Service, we just have to work with them to see what they can let us do, and we're only too happy to try.
I've got one other thing to add, if I can. I know at the PDC and the TPO, we're working hard to connect the bike trail that comes out through Richmond down through James City County all the way out to the Virginia Beach, so that somebody could possibly bike and it'll split in James City County and it'll go across over to Surrey and through Smithfield and all back around that way to try to give us more length in our bike trails. We're very lucky in James City County that we put so much funding into bike trails all across the community. We don't have everything covered, but we've got I think we're further along than most jurisdictions are as far as our ability, which really helped us in this pandemic, because I was in Walmart one day and look, there wasn't a bike on the shelf and all those bikes that they normally have in there. So it's telling me that the families are out there, they're biking, they're enjoying themselves even during these tough times. And that's great to see.
Thank you. Jim, we understand this question might be from Mrs. Eisenhower, but is there any information about when the Williamsburg DMV will be reopened?
We have not heard about the Williamsburg DMV. I think I saw that they had 2 in our area. Michael, do you remember what there was? Virginia Beach and one, and I can't remember, but it might have been one in Hampton.
I think so.
I think there was one on the south side and one on the peninsula. And I think it was either Hampton or Newport News. I think it might have been Newport News, that they were opening the DMV office in that area under this phase. But still, that's still, I think statewide, there are very few that are open yet. So what folks need to know is that, like my wife, whose license expired on the 12th of May, and now she's operating on an expired license. The governor's given her a reprieve. She's okay. And that when they open up again, I don't know exactly how long they're given, but I think it'd be pretty flexible, pretty reasonable. I know our James City County police officers would be very understanding with that. But people are going to have an opportunity to get back in, and when they do open and get caught up, and we're going to have a lot of catching up to do. So for right now, I think if you go on the DMV website, they'll probably tell you the nearest one, and my recollection is it's down on the Lower Peninsula. I don't know what the crowds would look like right now, but if you're game to stand in line, that's the place to go right now. We will be only too happy to put out through the county information as soon as we know when our local DMV is going to be open again, and maybe a little further information about how people who have priority to try to get expired things taken care of can get in there quickly.
And Jim, you may want to also mention the several meetings back before the pandemic came upon us, that the DMV that we voted on for the treasurer's office.
Oh yes, we a lot of folks don't realize we've had a DMV Select operating up at the northern end of the county out of our offices up there. We are now going to have one where we will be operating out of the treasurer's office down at Mounts Bay Road as well. So this is an opportunity where we work with DMV to allow our citizens access to some of DMV services without having to stand in line at the big DMV office. And any of you have ever been up to routine things, you can get license plates and things like that taken care of, car titles. I don't believe they can do license renewals, driver's license renewals, but they do have some services that you can get at county buildings now, which will help take some of the load off and make it easier for our citizens.
And I think they're going to do the real ID. Well,
yeah, I believe so. But I think that was going to be this October. It's been pushed back a year now. And I, like everybody else, I have my appointment for my real ID. And I don't know when it's going to be, but I've got the piece of paper. I got to get the date redone. So.
Yeah, and just a plug for DMV, I'd encourage our residents to go to the DMV website. The information, I believe it's a 90-day extension, the extension of the Clear ID, all that information is on the DMV website. And one other general question, we had some questions about water bills and things like that. We know that you also wear a hat as the board of directors for the Service Authority, and but if they have questions about their bill, discrepancies in their bill, yes, or why the bill hasn't changed from quarter to quarter, month to month, who should they contact?
Okay, let me start out with, first of all, May is the transition month. We are transitioning from quarterly billing to monthly billing. And from my perspective, that is a tremendous improvement, because what's happened when I first moved here, you get a quarterly water bill and you turn on your irrigation system and you got a leak, and you don't find out until 3 months later you got a leak. And then I was getting some folks who would not know about the irrigation and then had a leak on top of it, and would get these huge $2,000 or $3,000 water bills. So what we would have to do is go back, help find the leak, try to adjust the bills. So if you have a question or a problem with your water bill, please contact the Service Authority, or if you need to, contact your supervisor. We can work with them to get you with the right people. If they think you have a leak, they'll be glad to come out and help look at it. If there are extenuating circumstances, the general manager has the authority to negotiate a little bit to try to help on behalf of some of our constituents. But the big thing is that you're going to see a change effect starting May, but it takes effect with the new budget in July. We're going to go from a 3-tiered system to a 4-tiered system. used to be like what, 5,000 gallons, 1 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15 and above. Now it's going to be in 4,000 gallon increments. The net result is for the people in the lower tiers is your actual water rates will go down slightly. Where it's going to go up is in the top tier, that real above 12,000. But some of us got to make the transition. Some of us got a bill for 1 month. Some of us got a bill for 2 months. But starting in June, everybody will be on a monthly billing cycle, and it should make it a lot easier to identify when you have a problem. It'll be a little easier to identify, your usage, because you think about it more often when you see the bill on a monthly basis as opposed to quarterly. I think people quarterly had a real hard time interpreting the bill. Michael, anything to add?
Yeah, and for everybody out there, we also had a company come in and evaluate our process and where we were good and where we needed help and what we needed to improve. And during that process, they were telling us that your infrastructure is old. Some of it is very old, and you need to start putting money in towards that, because when it fails, it's going to be a lot of cost to you. So by doing that, it's put us in a better bond rating. It's given us the ability to realize that what needs to be changed and what needs to be upgraded. And of course, there's always a break here and there that we've got emergency funds that we apply for that and through the service authority. But it gave us an outlook, still keeping us the lowest, but also gave us an outlook that you need to put a little bit more funds away in order to make sure that you can maintain this system and keep it up as it ages. And we've got stuff that we've been putting off doing because, well, it'll stay a little longer. And they were like, no, what you need to do is start addressing those issues now, because they're going to compound. And it's only smart and prudent with your funds in order to do that now and start thinking about that and lining that up. So that was a good strategic move for us and for the service authority.
Yep.
Thank you. So we have about 80 folks that have that are online with us, and we want to say thank you for that. And Jim and Michael, some of your introductory remarks, you talked about the budget, what you're looking at now with potential cuts and things like that. So this is a twofold question. Are you anticipating a change in the tax rate? And secondly, are you considering any special fees or other revenue enhancers to try to bring in additional revenue?
To start out with the first question about the tax rate, that was one of the first questions that was asked by one of our supervisors to be examined by the staff. And in other words, if we did in fact lose that $16 million worth of revenue for tourism, what would it cost to replace that revenue if we raise taxes? So that, in other words, you would be shifting that burden from the business taxes that are associated with tourism to the property holders. And I believe it was about 14 cents. It was nice to know information as far as I'm concerned. I don't think any of us on the board have any indication or any inclination to examine the tax rate. I think it's probably, given everybody's circumstances with a lot of people being unemployed and a lot of uncertainty, it would probably be a horrible time to try to contemplate raising a tax rate. I think we have the ability to live within our means. I think it just means that we have to make some wise decisions on how we parcel out our money for different programs. So from my perspective, no, I don't think we're seriously examining the property tax increase right now. I will tell you that there are a lot of uncertainty. We do not know how, for example, the school's funding from the sales tax is going to shake out. Some assumptions were made. I think that we may turn out better there. We may turn out better on some of our other taxes, but we won't know because they lag about 2 to 3 months. The first full month, March was part of a month we lost. April was the first full month where we've had a real impact. We won't know those figures until late May or no, I think it's till late June or early July. So we're still about 4 or 5 weeks away from getting a real good feel for how the revenues are going to turn out for us. I think what's really helpful for us right now that is if we got that $6.7 million that shows up on July 1st, that will help us get through some of this transition. But as Michael and I have discussed with our fellow supervisors at the board, we're making an estimate of 10%. We're going to build a budget based on that. And then we're going to look at the feedback we get on how the revenues actually come in, what expenses we can defer, how we can make this work long term. And if things turn out better than expected, we have the ability to make a mid-course adjustment. We may be making budget adjustments on a quarterly basis during this year. I mean, this is an unusual year. If the revenues are there, great, then we can maybe get a little more back to normal. If they're not, we may have to tighten our belt a little bit more as we go. But that we will not know probably until I think maybe after the 1st of July. Michael?
Thank you. As far as the tax increase, no, I'm not in favor of tax increase at all. I think we can live within our means. I think we're set in a pretty good place. We had a tax increase several years back, and it put us in a good position. Will we have to tighten things up? Yes, we will. Will we know what the final number is? Not at this time, but we're going to learn what it is. And we're going to have to live within those means. And I know a lot of people with the work I do and all that are out of jobs. And I know the chairman of the school board has asked that we do a tax increase. And I'm sorry, but I don't think we can tax our way out of a situation. I think we got to live within our means. We've got to watch what we spend on. We've got to manage what we have, and we've got to work together as a team. And that's the only way we can get out of this is work tight and together and pay attention to every single penny. Jim is dead right on a lot of the things that he's been bringing up as far as we're watching every dime, we're checking everything, we're finding out where we can spend. If we get federal funds, we're going to try to utilize every dollar we can utilize in order to get us through this situation. And we don't know, and we won't know for a while what this situation is. But as far as raising taxes, I know that there's a lot of people that are right now still without a job. And I don't know how you can ask somebody who's out of a job, can I raise your taxes while you can't afford to eat and can't afford to rent or can't afford to buy or can't afford to live? And so I think it's up to this board, and I know this board has not talked about that. I mean, we said what would it cost, but we haven't talked about any increase. We have talked about where we need to cut. We have talked about rolling up our sleeves. We've talked about working good together as 5 people to try to figure out how do we get through this, and if this happens or that happens, what are we going to do? And we're putting in things in place. We're putting teams together to try to work through this, to figure this out, that are smarter than we are, to try to help us with some of these. This is what we're seeing. This is what we're not seeing. This is what we're thinking. And I think other people are trying to do the same thing, but I want the citizens to know that this 5-member board is really dedicated to working within what we have and concentrating on cutting whatever we need to in order to get us through this. And then once we do, restoring all those things that we've been trying to do till we lost where we lost. So, we're going to keep working hard. And I can tell you that this board is spending a lot of time behind the scenes working on things. It's incredible. And I'm so proud of the 5 members there doing an excellent job.
Thank you. Next question is we just received our recycling bill, our quarterly bill. And so 2 thoughts along those lines. One, how's that new program working for you? And do you anticipate any near-term changes to that? And then more specifically, have you considered increasing green pickup from lawns and things like that as part of a either recycling or waste management effort?
You want to start? Michael,
Yeah, I can start. On the board, recycling is very important to us. And China has stopped accepting the amount they were accepting before. So it's been a challenge. All the recycling companies are having trouble even trying to make a living recycling right now. And if anything gets into the recycling network, it can end up causing the whole batch to be thrown away and not get recycled. So that's disheartening to us because we want to recycle, and we've talked about, and we have put money into the recycling program to help it go along. We've also decided that we tasked the county administrator within the next 5 years to find us a goal on how we could utilize not only trash collection, but recycling. And you can also call the county if you need brush or that sort of thing. I think it's $25. They can come out with a thumb and pick up stuff out of off the side of the road and that sort of thing. So we are offering a little bit of service of that as well. It may be suspended right now during this pandemic, but that is a service we offer as well. Jim?
Yeah, I'll tell you that we've been through this several times as a board in the past. We are one of the few jurisdictions that does not do county mandated pickup. If you go into the city of Williamsburg, your trash service is provided by the city by contract. Actually, I think the city might be doing it themselves. I know over in York County, they do it by contract. But almost all of the jurisdictions on the peninsula, with our exception, your trash pickup and as a result, your recycling pickup is all done through the county. You are required to participate as part of the city or the county that you belong in. We don't do that right now. As you know, we all individually go out and contract with whoever we want to do our pickup. And I know the homeowners association has been good about negotiating a reasonable rate with a couple of service providers, which has helped. But we found that a few years back, there was a proposal that if we did go to a county pickup program where everyone in the county would participate, it would be required, mandatory, that everybody in the county would participate with a county trash pickup, that we could do the recycling program in addition to it for a very nominal fee. Whereas the way we're doing it now, where everybody does their own trash pickup negotiations, the cost for our recycling was considerably more, and that's one of the factors that we had to wrestle with when we went to this for fee for service. One of the things Michael and I would have had a discussion about was, well, why don't we just pay for this out of the tax revenues? A lot of people ask that question. It's very good. Well, we have a lot of folks in Michael's district that live out pretty remote and don't get this service, and it would be unfair to take their tax money to provide a service that they wouldn't be allowed to get. And so that's where we sort of wrestled with it and came up with going with the fee for service. We did lose a lot of folks who were recycling beforehand, who now either aren't participating in the program, although we are still at a reasonable level that we sort of expected. I think we're at an interim point. I think the board will probably come back and look at a county-wide trash and recycling pickup program, but we need to have the staff do the due diligence on it, bring it back to us, and tell us what it can be done for, what it would save our constituents, and then we need to go out and talk to our constituents about it and see if they're in favor of it. We have to be able to come out and sell a program to you to tell you this is going to be in your best interest. It'll be cheaper for you. We can do it. I think the biggest problem we have right now with recycling is people are saying, how can I make sure that the stuff I'm putting in my recycling bin, in fact, gets recycled? And we can tell you that we contract with VIPSA. VIPSA contracts with the Tidewater Fiber, who does the actual recycling. But part of that contract that they have requires them to verify the disposition of that material. So we have a pretty good comfort level that what you are putting in your bin is getting recycled. The problem we have is, as Michael mentioned, that if you contaminate that stream, a lot of it then has to get thrown out. So you don't put things in that are not allowed because, you know, it just is making it tough to operate right now.
And I might add too a little bit onto that is when the board was talking about that and all that, we also asked the county administrator, said, not only do we want a plan of what may be our best option, but also the collectors that are out there now, we want them to have time
Access.
to either work with the company that's going to do the work, or maybe they have to look and try to work with them as far as other employment, because we don't want to cut anybody out of a job that's working in the county or anything else. So, you know, it's a partnership working with the local trash collectors and make sure we don't hurt anybody that's our citizen that's doing trash collecting now and bring in a bigger firm. We want to be able to try to figure out a way of how we can marry those two together.
That's an excellent point Michael has made, because that was a concern about some of our smaller homegrown businesses here, and that the county, when we have a mandatory program, doesn't mean we're going to just contract with one particular agency. Especially some of these smaller agencies may be what we absolutely have to have in order to reach out and service some of the more remote areas of the county. So those are things that are uppermost in our minds when we want to take a look at how we would structure such a program. But again, this is the kind of thing that we're going to be coming back to before we do anything like that. We're going to be coming back to the citizens and laying out what the options are and trying to get feedback, because you know, we want to make sure that we're doing something that folks will recognize as a value to them, and get that input before we take any steps along that way.
Thank you. Michael, you talked about the desire to connect a bike trail from Richmond down in Virginia Beach, and talking a little bit more locally, could you help us vision the multi-purpose trail on Long Hill Road, and if there are any similar type of plans, bike trail or multi-purpose trail for News Road?
A News Road, there's a little bit in place, but it's the connectivity and how do we connect everything together, and that's been a real tough thing. It's even with sidewalks we have trouble with. You know, there'll be people ask us, why is there a sidewalk in 200 feet and there's no other sidewalk connected to it? And so we ask for sidewalks, we ask for bike trails, we ask for multiple purpose trails, and when we're trying to develop an area and put it in there. So not only is it developed for the people that are developing it, but it's developed for the community use as well. So the multi-purpose trail on News Road, I don't think we're probably going to have anything more than the bike lane in there. And but out off of Long Hill Road, of course, we'll have that there, and we're also pushing that in the Grove area, and we're trying to put that in as we try to widen out Old 60 in order to make that, and tying into that as well is the Skiss Creek interchange is in the process now. The environmental work's being done to that. That was put on the shelf years ago. We've resurrected that. We've got that funded fully, and that process is moving forward now, and won't be long you'll be starting to see dirt being moved and that sort of thing in order to get that interchange around there, which will relieve the traffic down in the Grove area on Route 60. So as far as we're trying to push any intermodal, any bike trails, any use that we can possibly push into any new projects that we can have in order to give us a better flow of traffic, not only pedestrian wise, but also traffic wise and vehicles. Jim?
No, I think it's been a long time coming on Long Hill. I think you'll see after this project is done, people will be able to go from the rec center, you know, up to 7-Eleven and out across Old Town and things, using these trails and paths, which is something that we haven't had in the past. But as Michael says, it doesn't all happen all at once. It's incremental. We've got a lot of places out on News. If you go around on Centerville Road, up on the northern end through Michael's district, there are a lot of places where communities have been built, and then they have sidewalks that are up front their property, and then it stops at the edge of the property boundary. And then slowly but surely, as things ultimately get built, we start connecting these things, and you get the ability to get from one community to another to a shopping area. But we hear a lot about the sidewalk to nowhere, like the bridge to nowhere. But we can't afford to go build all of them all at one time. And it's to our benefit to try to get what we can with each development as they go, and then hopefully come up with a plan to try to integrate them so that they become more functional for people as quickly as we can.
Jim, the next question, and perhaps we're getting down to the last one or two questions. There's certainly been a significant contraction in retail and existing space with this pandemic, but there was also considerable open existing retail space before this spring. Can you talk about what the type of directions that the economic development coordinator might be working on and things like that to work in that regard?
Yeah, one of the things that I was very frustrated with when I was running about 3 years ago, Michael and I, was the amount of open space we had at the time. I think over the last 3 years, until this pandemic came along, we've made pretty good progress in filling a lot of the open spaces. I know there were a couple of places. I'll tell you, the Colony Square Shopping Center, which was down on Jamestown Road, was literally dead. And what I think two things have made that. One was the restore, and number two was the carrot tree. And all of a sudden, that's a hot place to go, and it's coming back. It's pretty well full, which is a little surprising because that type of mall I wouldn't have expected to recover as quickly. The one that was even in worse shape was on Route 5, and that one has made in my mind, a phenomenal turnaround. It's not totally full yet, but compared to what it was about 3 years ago, Michael, I think you might agree.
Yep.
We've got a lot of businesses in there so we've made some strides. I'll tell you that there are a couple of places that are perennial sore spots. One has been in Newtown, and it's usually along Main Street. And then the other has been some of the outlying parcels up at Lightfoot. And the frustration for me is that some of these places get built. They're controlled by out-of-state interests. And when we start asking the questions, the investors in them are mostly interested, I think, in a tax write-off, and whether it's occupied or not really isn't relatively important to them. At least that's the way it seems. Those are some of the ones that are the hardest to fill. I would have always thought that maybe somebody would say, "Oh, it's empty. We'll lower the rent a little bit, and we'll get it full." But yet we have a lot of empty storefronts on the Main Street in Newtown, and to a lesser degree up at Lightfoot, that are sort of defy logic, and it's really, really hard. I will tell you that our Economic Development Authority has done a wonderful job. The two, lumber liquidators vacated. You got a huge 300,000 square foot facility. That was where Navian went in. You've got the grocery store, of all things, is really difficult to repurpose. And here we had a bank come in to use the grocery store facility for back office, and that's a tremendously good reuse of something. So I think we've got a really good Economic Development Authority or Economic Development team to try to keep working at it. The bad news is that we're probably going to have some vacancies as a result of this downturn, and we're just going to have to grin and bear it and keep working after it. The other side of that coin is sometimes I'm not too convinced or too receptive to building new stuff when we got old stuff that's sitting around empty. So that's a factor I think the board has to consider when anytime we have a new application come before us. Your thoughts, Michael?
Yes, and I agree that there's spaces that are open, but sometimes that space does not fit a new company coming in. So you've got to kind of weigh those as well and look at that and go, okay, that store can't fit into this space, or the space is too big or too small, or it doesn't fit the brand. And so a company sometimes won't move in even though we offer them. And Chris Johnson has got a whole list of everything that's open. And anytime somebody comes to James City County and says, hey, I want to put a store here, I want to build here, I want to do something here, and he offers them the spaces and says, these are the spaces we have available now. And then he'll take them around, and staff will take them around and show them, you know, the spaces we have and try to promote those spaces. But then a lot of times you'll find a company that says, well, that doesn't fit my exact needs. I'm looking for X. And then they'll start looking at land and that sort of thing, and then bring it through the board. So what we're trying to fill those spaces as best as possible.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. If we could bring Bob Moeller back in, I know he would like to express his thanks to you on behalf of the board, and we really appreciate you being with us tonight. And hopefully we can bring Bob in here without too much delay.
Hopefully the next time we do this, we can do it in person.
Yes, yes. In fact, not only do I want to thank you for coming, I want to thank all our residents who joined us online. And we're all together. At this point, I would ask my residents to join me with a round of applause for both of you and a thanks. So consider yourself applauded, even if it's just me. Thank you very much. As I promised at the start, I'm here to answer questions that we have for Fort Colony, but first, and I want to thank Michael and Jim. And if you want to leave, we just thank you very much for taking the time. They spent a lot of time. We had a little warm up to figure out this thing last night. So this is our second try at it. Hopefully it's worked. So thank you very much. And you're free to exit if you will.
Before you turn off, gentlemen, we had talked about this, Bob, before. We wanted to express our appreciation for their leadership and support in our master plan proffer amendment.
Right, and that's what I did at the start, you know, and
Yes.
I thank them and their
I know
colleagues.
we had a lot of folks join us in late.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I did. I thank the board who approved our proffer amendment on the 12th of May at their board meeting, and their team, their planning director and their council who worked with our team, Drew and Sue Tarley. So once again, thank you very much, and you're free to mute and leave.
Can I put a little plug in before we leave?
Sure.
I'd like to thank everybody in Fort Colony for allowing Jim and I to, and Jim of course lives over there, but allowing us to come into your home and talk a little bit and give you some information on the county and what we're doing. Also, Fort Colony has such a unique bunch of people in there, best I could say it. They're from all walks of life. They've got a load of knowledge, and we're always looking for talent on our boards in James City County. So if you could please, anybody who wants to get on a board or commission, please write us, let us know. And it could be anything from trash to planning to zoning. And we're always looking for people to come in and join us and help us out and help us make the decisions we need to make. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. That's a good plug, and we have the same plug. We need volunteers also for us in our board. So there's always work for good volunteers, and we have tons of them in Fort County. Thank you. So thank you very much, gentlemen, and we'll see you next year, hopefully together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Be great.
All right.
Bob, one of the first questions regarding the homeowners association, is there any updates on the planning for the New Zion Baptist Church or the CCRC property off of News Road?
Yeah, I'll start with the New Zion Baptist Church. We've been in contact with the land planner, who's kind of their lead on it. And as recently as 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had an email exchange with them, and they're slowing down because of the pandemic. You could obviously understand that. We're all doing that. So they're slowing down because of the pandemic. And they're focusing their attention really on the parcel that's going to be next to the existing church, and that would be their senior center or whatever they call that thing. And right now, they have no plans to develop the neck, what we call the neck, that narrow part, or the parcel down by the pond. There are no plans to do that. Doesn't mean that they won't in the future, but right now, immediately, there are no plans to do that. And so the planner, their architect, thanked Ford's County because we really brought a lot of issues to the surface and everything. So I think right now, at least for the next 2 or 3 months, nothing's going to happen, and we'll keep our eye on it and keep everybody apprised. But I think that's a good way that it's going. The CCRC initially was going to be purchased by a company called Retirements Unlimited out of Roanoke. They failed to get a final deal done with the landowners, and so they were looking at getting some help. And they went to Fry Properties, which is a big company down in Norfolk, and who does developments, I guess is the right word, and that kind of thing. And they partnered with them to actually, they made an initial conceptual submittal to the, I guess it's a conceptual submittal to the James City County. They haven't finalized that yet. But it would look at making a smaller, fewer units. Fry Properties would then build the units like they've built down in Norfolk. I forget, Drew, you've got the names of the places where they've done it, but it's more, in my mind, it's more independent living units. That's their focus, is kind of a village, if you will. They even talked about having a village that would be golf cart friendly, so you drive golf carts around through the area. And then they let Retirement Unlimited focus on the CCRC piece of it, which is the continuing care. We have offered to them to come down and talk to us, and this was before the pandemic happened. But as they progress down the road, and before they get before the city, the Board of Supervisors and the Planning Commission and everything, they want to come and talk to us. It may be in this type of a format, depending on where we are in subsequent phases of reopening Virginia in the governor's phases. But it may be this kind of a format. And I don't know what the experience everybody else has out there, but I think it's probably not an unreasonable format to use to get that kind of information out. So that's what I know about those two. And Drew, he's been our point man on a lot of these issues. Did I miss anything?
No, sir. That's a great summary. Regarding the Fry property, they, as you noted, they have been working with James City County. They have submitted a conceptual plan that can be seen on the James City County website. But we'll certainly provide more information as that develops. They need to discuss things like changing the unit count. It's noted as a CCRC now, and whether there are plans to go through the 3 full stages of a CCRC, or just maybe 2 of the 3. And then, of course, the proffers is left over from 2008 in that regard. The other comment, Bob, is we certainly have a lot of dog owners in Ford's Colony. We have a lot of dogs. I think this pandemic brought in a number of dogs, because we saw a number of fence applications at the ARC. But there's a concern being expressed about dogs that are not on a leash, and probably a bigger problem than that is dog owners picking up the dog waste.
And we've had, I don't know what more we could do. One of the things we did was to install, at least when I walk around my Edinburgh Loop walks that people have probably seen me on, I do that a lot. We've had 2 waste receptacles that we installed, one down by Williamsburg West and a couple on the Edinburgh Loop, to facilitate people that have pets pick up your dog's waste, and then there's a place to deposit it. You don't have to carry it all the way around on your walk. But you're right. I've walked and I've seen numerous things. I bend down, pick it up, and I hold it out. And then when I pass the waste receptacle, I deposit it. But I shouldn't have to do that. We ask the owners to do that. If you see it, maybe just nicely ask the owner in a non-threatening manner, gee, it'd be great if you could not only pick it up, but put it somewhere. Leashes, we have a leash requirement here for dogs. They have to be under the control of a leash, unless they're in a fenced area in, a unit, of course, a housing unit. So if you see that, contact security and let them know, and they'll get out there as soon as they can, and they may or may not actually see the person. I don't know what else to do on that. Anything else that you can think of, Drew? I mean, we tried to help on the
No,
lease.
as you said, there's some confusion because James City County does allow voice control of the animal, but our rules are very specific that a leash is required. So we certainly encourage folks to speak to their neighbors, to call security with specific information, if at all possible, so that we could follow up on it. And by the time somebody gets home and calls it, and we respond by security, usually that owner and dog are long gone. So we do want to follow up if we get a report.
Yeah, and one of the things I point out is we have run some articles in Talk of the Colony in the recent months, trying to focus on this and asking people to be mindful of picking up their dog waste and keeping their dogs on leashes. And we'll run those kind of articles and reminders on a regular basis, every 3 months or something like that, in Talk of the Colony. But that assumes everybody reads the Talk of the Colony, which may or may not be the case.
So residents may not be aware of this yet, but the board met this afternoon and passed a resolution concerning the opening of facilities in terms of what the status is through June 10th and what the plans are after June 10th. And an email went out to that effect to the neighborhood. If anyone in the neighborhood did not receive that email, please get in touch with our office, because we need to make sure your email is in our distribution. But Bob, the question is, can you help explain the thoughts that the board had about remaining for our facilities to remain closed during phase 1, which is we're anticipating through June 10th, specifically as it might relate to the swimming pools, and because certainly the phase 1 would allow a certain number of people to lap swim, only 1 per lane, and what the board's thought processes are of remaining closed through phase 1.
Yep, we looked at that. We had an hour and a half, 2-hour discussion, I think, at the work session talking about that, and talking about, we've also had requests from the tennis club to think about opening up tennis for play. We're mindful of the need to provide our residents opportunities for exercise, for getting around and to use the amenities we have. But we're also balancing that with the requirements that we have from the governor on what has to remain. And as Drew pointed out, let's talk about the pools. The pools, it's not only a 10-person limit in phase 1, it's also you have to be in pool lanes. You have to have we have to have 2 lifeguards. We have 2 lifeguards on duty, which means that at any one time we could have 8 people in addition to our 2 lifeguards during phase 1 in the pool. And so it seems to us that you also have to then sanitize areas. That's part of the whole description. We have to provide the sanitization of touch points like guardrails, the rails on the ladders, anything else. So we talked about how do we do that? And we got a very comprehensive plan from the Killer Whales swim team, how they propose to do it, with only 8 swimmers, 1 per lane, a coach and a supervisor, if you will, that would be the only ones admitted. No parents, they'd have to be outside of the enclosure of the pool, and how they distance everybody on the pool deck and all that. So when we looked at that and looked at the cost and the benefit of doing that, we felt that if we just stuck to the 10th, our hope is that we might get some relief from the government to actually allow more usage of the pool. Because the concern is The swim team uses it for whatever time they have. Then we open it to families. And how does one maintain control of younger children who don't understand what do you mean I can't go next to Johnny or Mary? And so that's a concern. So that's what we thought about doing it. And it would give us time to think through and actually put in place processes and procedures that comply with what the government's requesting. Specifically, how are we going to do? How will we schedule so only 10 people at a time go in there? Do they get a half an hour slot? Do they get an hour slot? Do we then have a half an hour between times when they go in there so we have time to sanitize things? Do we keep pool chaise lounges and chairs in there because then they have to be sanitized? And the responsibility for sanitization, responsibility or the onus is on the owner. It's on the HOA, even though we'd ask the people to sanitize. So how does one do that? What procedures do you do? How do you sign in? How do we manage that? So that's what we did on the pool. The same with the tennis is we were looking at, by the time we got processes in place where you've got signage on the tennis court when you go in that tells you this is what you have to do. You have to socially distance 10 feet, I think it is, for outdoor exercise activities versus the 6 feet inside. How do you sanitize? Are you allowed, do we not ask people to touch someone else's tennis ball, but identify your own tennis ball? That's the only one you touch when you serve. Eliminate brushes and things like that, which are common touch points. And by the time we got those processes in, our council also requested that we get waivers, COVID waivers, which we're working with the activities committees to come up with. By the time we got that in place, we're probably looking at a week or 2 weeks before the 10th comes along. So that's why we said, let's get it out to the 10th. That'll give us time to get we've asked the MA and the activities committee to help us and the various clubs and activities to come up with how they would mitigate all the risk factors that are associated with their particular function. So it's not just a matter of open it up, come on in. Tennis, do they have only singles? Do they have doubles? And if they're doubles, do they have to have a vacant court between the doubles? All those kinds of things. And bocce ball is probably even harder because it's the same ball. I don't know how you don't touch the ball. And pickleball was the other issue.
Right. If I may add, one unfortunate situation is our swim and tennis club pool is not even available to us, and we're hoping that it's available to us before the end of June. But it really got held up in the pandemic in terms of the receipt of materials and contractor availability. So this first phase one, the only pool available to us is Westbury Park. And certainly our experience with our lap swimmers is they like to get in and get out generally in the morning time frame. So some of the things the board talked about is with limited date swimmers at a time, one per lane, just the economic feasibility of that pool being open at the expense of the entire community just wasn't reasonable. So hopefully with phase two, with being open to more swimmers, hopefully is at least as many as 50 swimmers, we're hoping that we could make that work.
Yeah. Any other questions that came up?
I don't have any other questions on our board here for the FCHOA.
Interestingly, let me just add to what Drew said is Rick Beers, one of our board members, pointed out that North Carolina is just instituting their phase two. Now, it's not the same as we may or may not have in Virginia, but it's a good measure to look at. And they specifically talked about pools. And it comes down to so many people per square foot of pool area, so many people per square foot of deck area, and those kinds of things. So it's gonna, I hope, we all hope that it eases the restrictions, but it's not gonna be everybody come in. It's still gonna be socially distanced. In North Carolina, it's socially distanced, and when you're on the deck, you have to have a mask. Do not wear the mask in the water because it's difficult to breathe through a wet mask, but things like that. So we're going to see where it goes. We've penciled in a special board meeting for the morning of the 10th, 9:30, a virtual board meeting, to talk just about what we hope the governor is going to tell us on the 9th, and how we can then take that and implement it going forward, signage, all that, and what kind of things we can open up.
So
That's
Bob,
it.
I think we're beginning to wrap up here. I just would like to remind our community that we have recorded this webinar, and we'll excuse me, make it available on our FCHOA website for those that weren't able to see it this evening. We had about 80 folks join us at one point. We've got about 55 hanging in with us now. And so
Okay, good.
I believe it's time to say goodnight.
Well, thank you very much for those 55 that are hanging in, and for the other 35 that were hanging in for a while. We had a 100-person video limit with this particular software. So I'm glad we didn't reach that, because they would have had some that couldn't see us. So once again, thanks for joining us. If you have any comments about this kind of a format, we'd be glad to hear them. It's, like I said, it's new to us. It's a whole new ball game. So let us know what you think. And thank you very much. I say good night.
One last thank you to Sally Walls and Amanda Buckley in the back room. Helping
I had
to
it
make
down on my
this
board and I forgot. It's the back room. It's the ladies in the back room who fielded the questions and passed them on to Drew. It's Sally Walls, Amanda Buckley, and Jenny Allen. So thank you, ladies.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good night all.
Good night.